Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas, on Wednesday, January the 15th, and welcome to our commentary. Well, I guess the big breaking story, almost literally breaking, as I speak to you at 2 o'clock or so on Wednesday afternoon, is this hostage deal. And I don't have all the particulars. I suppose it'll be better known during the course of the afternoon and evening and into tomorrow, I suppose. But look, any deal that brings families and unites them with these hostages, I'm all for that. And exactly how it happened and why it happened, we can get into that in a subsequent video. But right now, I'm just happy that something has been worked out, and that some of these families will be able to see the family members who have been held hostage since October the 7th. So we're happy about that. This is one of those moments where it really politics doesn't matter. You're happy to see people, reunited with families. Well, today, of course, is the day that President Biden is going to say goodbye. I suppose he'll mention something about this hostage deal tonight when he speaks to the country. And, he'll do what other presidents have done, which is talk about their successes. And he will say that it was the great honor of his life. In fact, I think there was a letter that they published today, which I assume is going to be part of the presentation tonight. But look, when we're talking about the Biden presidency, we're talking about a failed presidency. There's not much more you can say about that. I don't think history is going to be kind to this president. And you've got four things that jump at me right away that I wrote down that immediately jumped at me when I think of the Biden presidency. First of all, Afghanistan. This happened really in his first year. And by the way, I don't think he ever recovered from Afghanistan. I think Afghanistan was a real hit on his reputation because we were told, of course, that he was the experienced statesman and, he knew how to deal with these crises. And Afghanistan was a total, complete disaster. Not only did we lose 13 young Marines in our departure, but my gosh, everything that was done in Afghanistan, something like 4,000 soldiers were killed in Afghanistan. And what do you get for all that? You leave all this equipment behind. So I think that was a disaster of historic proportions. And I do agree, by the way, I do agree with those who say that when Putin saw that, he said, this is the moment to get into Ukraine. I really think there was a connection there. But anyway, Afghanistan was a total failure. And that's on President Biden. The other one is the border. I mean, the way the border was handled. Look, Trump left the border in pretty good shape. He left the border in pretty good shape. The agreement that he had with Mexico, remain in Mexico, was a good agreement. I think there was a sense of order when Trump left, and that all fell apart when Biden started writing executive orders and canceling this and canceling that. I think then the border went into the chaotic mess that we have right now, or that we have seen over the last 3 or 4 years. So I think the border is a horrible legacy for President Biden, a very bad one, a very bad one. And there's really no excuse for it. There was no reason to open the border. There was no reason to do any of this. You could have simply, if you want to have political asylum, well, there's a process for political asylum. But this idea that people were coming in and then seeing judges on the American side, that simply became a disaster. That was the beauty of Remain in Mexico, that you had to stay in Mexico until the judge had a chance to say yes or no. So the border, total, complete disaster. Then you get into, can I say, family ethics? This was not a family, let's say, that, let's just say that this was not a very ethical family. There's no question in my mind that Hunter Biden used the name to enrich himself. And we have enough information about the family and the money that they made directly or indirectly. So this was not a good, ethics were not the best in this family. And of course, last but not least, the inflation. Inflation was devastating, absolutely devastating for all of us. Now, President Biden apparently will say today, or he wrote in his letter, I assume he'll say the same thing tonight, that inflation is coming down. But look, of course, yeah, it's coming down, but it's the accumulated inflation. I mean, just think of, I mean, I can just give you a very quick example. You go to your favorite hamburger joint, 4 years ago it was 10, maybe $11. Now you're talking more like 15, 16, same food, same double cheeseburger with fries and a diet drink, same thing. And you're paying a heck of a lot more. That has a tremendous impact on the budget of a family, of anybody. So I think the overall record, no matter how much he tries to make it better or present it better, and use certain statistics to make his case, it isn't a good record. It isn't a good record, and I think that's the way he'll go down, as a man who failed, all along. I also think that the more we learn about this Trump warfare, these attacks and this campaign to destroy Trump through the courts, and the more we learn about the role of the White House in all of that, I think the darker and the more complicated that his legacy will be. So my best wishes to President Biden. I hope that you go back to Delaware. I'm sure it's very pretty there. And but you're not, again, your legacy is not going to be one of success. Your legacy is going to be one of failure. That's as much as I can say. Well, over in the Senate, we've had several of these candidates go through. I thought the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, I can never pronounce his last name, sorry, but it'll take me a while to learn his last name. Okay, but anyway, I thought the nominee for Secretary of Defense, to be polite, did a great job. And part of the reason he did such a good job is frankly because some of these lady senators on the committee were so hysterical in some of the things they were asking and the tone. So I think he made it. And when Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa, who has a military background, when she said, "I'm going to vote for him," I think that was the breaking point. That was the moment that I think he was in. He may not get a lot of Democrats, but he'll get enough Republicans plus a few Democrats, and he'll be in. He will be the Secretary of Defense. But what we are watching today with Pam Bondi, Attorney General candidate, and Senator Rubio, Secretary of State candidate, what we are watching, their performances today, are just absolutely amazing. I mean, Rubio has been on fire the entire presentation. And Bondi, I mean, they tried to go after Bondi, some of these Democrats, and she was absolutely great. And, it's funny. Can you just flip the table for a second? Imagine if Republicans were going after a Democrat woman like they're going after Bondi. Can you imagine all the people complaining about, harassing a woman and all of that? But I think she stood up very well to all of these senators. And she's going to make it with flying colors, and so is Senator Rubio. So I think those three had a very good day. Now, there are more coming. In fact, I think there's more going on today and tomorrow. And hopefully everybody will be voted on very soon so that they take their jobs. I think the new president needs them in their jobs as soon as possible. So hopefully they will be confirmed. I don't see any trouble, as I said, with Rubio. I don't see any trouble with Bondi. Those two ought to be confirmed tomorrow, if they can. And then, of course, the Secretary of Defense, he'll have a few more Democrats vote against them. But overall, I think he did well. But I've always felt that the new president should have the team ready by the time he comes in. This is one of the problems that I have with the current system, that, we used to have the presidents were inaugurated in March. I'm not saying we should go back to that, but somehow the cabinet should be confirmed, or they should start the confirmation process sooner. I know they have a problem because they changed the Congress in the first week of the year, of the month. So there are some operational problems that make the delay, almost inevitable. But I think these people should be confirmed as soon as possible, because the president has to have his team ready as soon as possible. And I hope that at least the Attorney General, the Secretary of Defense, and the Secretary of State are ready as soon as possible. But they did a great job. By the way, one bit of news concerning the inauguration: we now understand that President Trump did not invite the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum. She was not invited. I don't know why. He did invite somebody else from Mexico, some other potential candidate for president. So, I'm a little surprised. I thought that these invitations were pretty academic and pretty formal, but I guess she's not going to be invited, or she was not invited. And speaking of Mexico, I've got a post over the American Thinker today talking about the Mexican peso. It has depreciated a little bit over the last few days against the dollar. And it really has nothing to do with Trump. It has more to do with the fact that the World Bank is predicting that the Mexican economy is only going to grow at 1.5% in 2025. Well, they need more growth than that. Mexico needs a lot more growth than that because of the population and because of everything else. So, a little bit of concern there with the Mexican economy, probably more than anything else. And on this day in history, 1967, so that would make it 59 years ago. Is that right? 59? Anyway, 1967, sometimes my math fails me. The first Super Bowl was played. Now, it was not called the Super Bowl back then. It was actually called the NFL versus AFL championship game. And that's because you actually had two different leagues, the National League and the American League. And they played each other, and sort of like the World Series in baseball. But that's what they called it. And in that game, Green Bay beat Kansas City. Now, later they called it the Super Bowl. I think it was after the fourth or the fifth Super Bowl or a game that they began to call it the Super Bowl. But the first one, the second one, were not called Super Bowl at all, because really for the first four were played before the two leagues merged. When you had an American League and a National League, and they were independent completely of each other. Then they merged after, I think it was in 1970, they merged. And then you had the National Conference, the American Conference, and you had some teams that actually, were relocated from one to the other. Like the Colts went to the American, the Steelers went to the American, and so on. But the first Super Bowl, the very first game we now call the Super Bowl, was played on this day in 1967. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And again, our sincere hope, is that this hostage deal gets done so that these families can be reunited with their family members. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later.